Okay, well, welcome. It looks like we're ready. I see that Brian has started the recording. This meeting has a captioner as well. So if you require closed captions, you can click that feature in Zoom and follow along. We're very excited that you're able to join our training today. As I mentioned, we're recording and we'll be archiving this on our website in the next couple of weeks. We're planning on presenting for about 30 minutes, and then that will be followed by 15 minutes for questions and discussions. We'd like this to be interactive. If you have a question, you can either make that comment in the chat box feature of Zoom, or you can click on the raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. What you'll need to do for that is go to the participants, and it will be listed as one of the options of things you'll see when you click on the participant list. Any of the raised hand questions that might be more, I don't know, longer or more complex, those will be responded to after the presentation. Brian Devereaux and Myrna Medina from CDBS will be answering questions if they can in the chat as we go along, but otherwise we'll do that at the end. And so at the end, when we do, everyone is muted right now, and you cannot turn your microphones on. We're doing that to keep background noise low or non-existent. And please keep your cameras off too as well. That will be less distracting for participants. But at the end, we will allow you to unmute yourself if you had a question during the discussion point. And we have a link to both a copy of this PowerPoint presentation and the resources in the chat, and we'll post that again at the end. We'll also be posting a short link to a survey for this training that we hope that you can take 2 or 3 minutes to complete. But once again, we're super excited to have you here at our first Tuesday mini training. And I'm Julie Meyer. I'm one of the educational specialists with California Deafblind Services. I work out of the San Francisco office, which is currently my home office in the East Bay near San Francisco. And today we're going to be talking about routines. Everything that we're planning to talk about in our next 10 sessions all have to do with the fact that we're living during a pandemic, during COVID, and that kids are going to school mostly from home. We know very few kids in California where schools are open. So we're really trying to deal with this situation and give families and professionals helpful suggestions and ideas. So today we're just going to start out with routines. I wanted to just start at the beginning to mention, if you follow our newsletter at all, which you can find on our website, or if you're on our listserv, you receive it. There's going to be an upcoming article that's really great that I'm encouraging everyone to read, and I've been sharing with a lot of families and educational teams in the last month that our project coordinator, Maurice Belote, wrote. And it's called Lessons Learned During COVID. And there were 3 takeaways that I think are important to keep in mind. One is really thinking about the quality of the instruction or the activities that kids are participating in. And so that lies under active engagement. Rather than filling kids' days with lots of busy work or tasks that might not be that meaningful or accessible, because kids who have difficulty seeing and hearing combined, it's very difficult for them to really engage through a screen with people who are not right there with them, that maybe we need to start thinking about quality over quantity. So making sure that the activities that students are engaging in, the things that they're doing at home with their families or their siblings, are things that are actually very meaningful and that are motivating to the child. The other thing that's very important is really thinking about, because everything kind of was upset and turned over last spring, is it was hard to explain to children who are deafblind and many other children who have disabilities why school wasn't happening, why everything changed all of a sudden, why schedules and routines weren't occurring in a typical way. So we really believe it's just as important to keep schedules and routines in place now that kids are learning from home. So really thinking about how can we set up ways that predictable things are happening during the days of the week, predictable things are happening on the weekends, so kids can really understand this means school time, this means schoolwork at home, this is what this looks like. It might be a particular place, it might be the materials they're using, it might be the activities they're doing. And then we're also going to talk about other routines that make it easier for families to be participating. Next week, we'll be talking about schedules and calendars. And then finally, we think the way to really continue to think about routines and making active, meaningful engagement is just thinking about what's already happening at home. And there's lots and lots of ideas of activities that are happening at home where we can be still helping kids work on communication skills, literacy skills, numeracy and math skills, fine motor skills. There's lots of ways, independent living skills. There's lots of things that kids can be doing. So that's what he talks about in that article. So that'll be something exciting for you to see. A lot of things that I'm going to share today really come from writing and materials that have been developed by the Texas Deafblind program, and especially Chris Montgomery, who's a peer and a colleague of ours who I really respect. And what he wrote about routines is here up in the top text box is a routine is a repeatable series of events that provides a predictable schedule to one's life. And I think we have to really think about that and realize that all of us rely on routines. That is how all of us get through life. That's how we get up and plan our day. We all have a routine in the morning that we do to get ready for work or for school, whether it's away from home or now at home. We have a particular routine we use maybe when we drive to a friend's house or to a family member's house. We follow that same path. There's an image here on the screen of a layout of a grocery store. And Maurice has shared this in other slideshows before, and I really like it. He really talks about, we have so many routines, so many habits that we do over and over again. And that's a good thing, because if we didn't have that order to our lives, it would be really hard to get through the day. It would be pretty unpredictable, pretty chaotic. And life can feel that way to children who experience both vision and hearing loss. They're missing a lot of the other information that we all use and rely on to understand what's going to happen next for that predictability. So, but he points out there's all kinds of things we do, such as probably all of us, when we go to the grocery store, at least I know I do, I follow that same path. I always go in that same door. I always go to the first section first. I even go in and out of certain aisles the same way. I might even pick a certain checkout stand that I like to go to. We all do a lot of things by habit, and that's a good thing. There's a lot of value to routine beyond just predictability and kind of keeping life manageable and not chaotic. A key thing, of course, is the order and organization that it allows, but there's also so many other things that are learned through routines. And because sighted and hearing people learned so many of those routines just incidentally. They were not directly taught to us. We learned it by watching other people. We learned it by listening. We learned it by seeing enough people doing it or doing it ourselves and getting that auditory feedback or visual feedback, the thumbs up, the good jobs, that we learned so many things beyond just organization and order. We learn things about concepts. We learned that if you're going to make a recipe, it's really important to put the right amount of ingredients in and do it in a particular order. That predictability, as we learn concepts, and we learn you need to do first this, next that, that predictability provides a lot of security. So we're now going to start feeling like more self-determined, more sure of ourselves that we're doing the right thing, more ready to try new things. Maybe it might be slightly different, but we're going to try it. And that all becomes because that predictability is allowing us to feel more certain of things. And that predictability also allows us to think about what might come next. So if you think about the routine of dressing yourself, kids learn very early on that it's important to put your socks on before your shoes, right? And so you can build that routine up that a child will start to learn that my socks are on now, and then they reach for the shoe, and then they start to participate more in that routine. Or they learn the same thing about when they're putting on a shirt or any other kind of dressing. They might also learn that it's important to brush your hair after you've pulled on your shirt, because if you brush your hair and get it all set and then you pull on your shirt and it gets messy, then you're going to have to go back and redo it. So this anticipation, and then that anticipation, what's exciting about that is for kids who are emerging communicators, now we've gotten to a point where they have the opportunity to initiate communication. They're not waiting for someone else to give the direction. They're not waiting for someone else to offer the choice. They're actively asking for something or commenting on something, requesting something, refusing something. So that's super exciting, I think. Oh yeah, so on this slide, we have a picture of a blender that's surrounded by a lot of fruit. And I put this in there because last week I was in a meeting with some other colleagues, and one was a parent and another person was a specialist that works with all kinds of children and adults in the community who are deafblind. And they were what the parent was saying is she was very excited. Her child has Usher syndrome. She was very excited. The one upside she thinks of the pandemic and all of us being stuck in our homes is that we finally get to work on all those other important things that were always so hard to get to for kids who have vision impairments or kids who are deafblind. All those parts of the expanded core curriculum, we call it, the independent living skills, the skills related to organization, the skills related to self-determination, skills related to using assistive technology, and maybe like learning how to cook and do your own laundry. There's all these things that we always said we don't have time for because school and homework were taking up so much time. She was excited. She goes, you know what? Don't worry about doing the math worksheet. She goes, go to the cupboard and pull out all your Tupperware and start matching the lids and organizing the Tupperware together. You're finding joy, you're finding meaning. The parents are getting a task done. The kids might find something to do with it. And there's all kinds of concepts that you can also teach. You could be teaching about empty and full and things like that. And then the other educator that was on the meeting talked about what she's really focusing on. And I loved this when she said it. She said, I think what we need to be doing now, rather than giving parents and families more things to do, is really help them find joy and meaning within the walls of their home and their yard with their child. Really think about what's already happening in the household. Where could we look for routines, events that are already happening where we could then build communication skill opportunities. We could build literacy. We could teach them how to do a new task. We could help them build independence. So keep that in mind. I really think, well, from what we're hearing from families last spring, as well as I continue to hear this fall, it's really overwhelming for families of kids who are deafblind trying to keep their kids engaged in some of this distance learning activity. One of the other jobs I do is I work at San Francisco State and I train teachers that are getting their special ed credentials. So believe me, I know how hard teachers are working to put together engaging lessons and try to make good connections and keep kids excited about learning. So absolutely. I'm just saying that there's additional access points to think about for kids who can't access lessons and instruction through a screen very easily. And we need to think about those kids and think about those families and think about, let's take a step back and think about how could you work on these things within your home, within the things that are already happening in your home. So I hope this is all making sense. I want to just take a quick, lost audio. I want to check, Brian, are you still able to hear me? Okay, looks like
yes,
the
I'm here and I
back.
can hear
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Do we have any questions yet or comments?
Nothing in the chat yet, or and no
Okay.
hands up.
Well,
So
the chat might start to get busy because now I have a question for all of you. I'd like to know, think of what some of the routines are in your home. I put down some routines that might be part of morning, school, afternoon, or evening routines, but I'd love to hear what other people think are routines in your home. And if you're not a family member and you're a professional out there, um, I'd love to hear what are some routines in your home as well. And then we would have, that would help you to kind of start thinking about how you could think about this for families. So I'm going to watch the chat now too and see if anything happens. So feel free to type away, everyone out there. What do you do? What are some routines, regular routines in the morning? What about the evening? I know one of the first things I do, I get up, I brush my teeth, and then I immediately go and make a big pot of tea. And then I usually go and check my email. We have a shy group today. Okay. Well, feel free to pop it in there while I talk a little bit more on this slide. So yeah, so there can be a lot of different activities that are part of potential home routines. There's also, I think, important things to think about is there might be a lot of chores that happen at home. That might be something where, as a family member, you might want to start thinking, maybe my child could be more involved in this. Maybe I don't have to do all of this. Would be a good opportunity to start teaching them how to do laundry, or help. They could help put groceries away. They could help with gardening. We could, start having them really take more responsibility for picking up and cleaning up their room or their play area. What I wanted to also say is I think we have to also remember social routines and play. That's really important right now as we're all kind of thinking about self-care. So we need to think about it as educators, as adults that are, and parents that are caring for kids at home. But also it's important for kids. They need some downtime. They need some time where they can just be joyful, where they're doing something that they really, really love. The thing, and I'm going to kind of move along now because I'm just checking the time here. So the thing about routines is there are a lot of elements that you have to pay attention to, because routines happen at certain times, right? So we don't brush our teeth at any old time in the day. There's certain times you do it. There's steps and orders to certain routines. It might be important that things happen in a certain order. And then certain routines happen in certain spaces or places and not others. And these are all of the things listed here are things that can help give people a child who's deafblind clues about what the routine might be, maybe certain materials that you use. So if you were to bring out a tray like this, where you have, the child's toothpaste and their toothbrush and their hairbrush and their cup, they're going to understand, and it may be happening at a certain time of the day, that it's going to be time for toothbrushing. Okay, so having things arranged and ready for that. There's a great, on the handout that I put up there, there's a great webinar that the National Center on Deafblindness did a short time in July that's archived now that you can see. And they really talked about, lots of times people talk about activities and routines as if they're the same thing. And they shared their thinking about it. And I really like this graphic, and I like how they were thinking about it, that routines are actually a series of, and as Chris said earlier, a series of events or activities that happen in a predictable way. So if we first think about the whole big day, we've got a schedule for our day. Then different parts of the day, there's a routine or certain activities that happen. Then within that routine, you have those certain activities, and then the skill is part of the activity. So that's where we want to get to, is highlighting routines that occur on a regular basis, and what are particular activities within that are places where kids need to still develop some skills or need to develop some concepts. Those are the things that you would highlight to teach at home then. And now I just want to, on the next two slides, just share the difference between two different kinds of routines. One is skill-based routines, and the second one is communication-based routines. So for skill-based routines, the focus really is on learning things in a predictable way. Skill-based routines, order is important. If you're making cookies or also if you're brushing your teeth, right? There's a certain order that you're gonna have to follow to do it in the way so that it turns out right. So that's important when we're focusing on that. What's important in skill-based routines is to have choices involved so that students have some control over the routine though as well. So it's not so adult directed, because that's going to be a place where students can demonstrate communication skills and initiation and anticipation. Sometimes kids have to learn things that they don't necessarily like. So you want to consider that. It's nice to focus on routines that kids like because they're going to be more likely to engage. It'll be easier to pull them in. But if they don't like something, think about, well, having it be part of a bigger routine so that one activity they don't really like, but they like something else as part of that routine. So maybe they don't like getting their teeth brushed, but they actually do like brushing their hair, or they like getting dressed. And then just remembering any routines that we're setting up, we want to make sure they're functional. So that functional means that it needs to happen if there's a reason it needs to happen. If the child wasn't doing this routine, then somebody else would need to do it. So we're not setting up just busy work to keep kids busy, but we're setting up something that needs to be done. So the Tupperware idea, you wouldn't have a kid every day organizing Tupperware just for fun. You do it because you want to get your Tupperware organized, and doing that together with your child could be educational and fun. Considerations for communication-based routines has more to do with you're really focused now on not so much as the kids developing skills. They might be skills they already have or that you're trying to expand, but what you're focused on is helping to build turn-taking and communication and conversation back and forth. This is a picture I love of my own children when they were very young, and it's functional for a reason because my oldest was in preschool, I think, and he was supposed to read a couple books every night. Read, which meant looking through them and things like that. And his little sister loved to just join him with that. So this was a routine that happened daily in my house, and there was a back and forth to it. She found certain pages that she liked in the book. She responded, he knew what to do. So there was a really nice back and forth. So you can think about ways that you might be able to do that with your child. I mean, it could be things, I've got my finished box here that you can use to put things away, but so you could have the book and you might present the book when it's time to do reading, or you might have the bubbles, and that's part of it. But the routine is not to teach a child to blow bubbles as much as to teach the child to take turns and to focus on vocabulary and fun. Okay, let's put that away. All right. And then within every routine, this slide has a good just reminder about things that we need to be thinking about making part of every routine. So it's not just the steps in the routine. We're always thinking about the communication targets, vocabulary that might be used. And then when we think about the beginning, middle of an end routine, we're using vocabulary like first, like next, like all done. We're using that word, we're signing it. Touch cues, object cues can provide a lot of information when the child sees you coming forward, with the tray, with their bowl and their spoon and cup. These are the things that are helping them know it's going to be time for mealtime, or maybe where they're sitting down at mealtime, they're starting to anticipate. Using a finished box again for helping them know things are done. And then consistent repetition, doing things in the same order, doing them the same way. You can add variety by changing some materials maybe to keep it novel, but using that same vocabulary, everybody using the same vocabulary in science. That's what's going to help the child learn those things. It's going to start to sink in. What I want to show you now, I'm going to take a quick check on time because things go by fast. So I've just got a couple things that I want to show you. These are all things that are included in the resource handout, okay? But this is what we're suggesting. I've been working with a number of teams in the past week that I've suggested follow this actual process for identifying how to build routines at home, routines where a child's going to work on this rather than be sitting in front of the screen for 45 minutes when they can't engage that way or they can't access the information. So the first thing you start out is you want to find out what's the family's day look like, and what are the routines. And it's similar to what I showed you earlier, but there's just a simple routine form that was developed by the Northeast Consortium on Deafblindness. And each section is the same, just asking the family to think about their routine. What are the typical parts of it? What's fun? What's enjoyable? Because remember, we're thinking about what the child likes, what's easy for the family to do. And then what parts go well, what don't go well. You can list those down. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, is this a very good, positive routine or not? That can help you do two things. It can help you, maybe you want to focus on some of the very good and positive ones because they're going to be easier to get the child to participate in and easier for the family. But you also might want to think of some that aren't so good because those might be areas to build skills. So it just breaks down those same 4 areas I showed earlier. I want to go back to my slide. Sorry, I don't know why it went out. Okay. And then there's another form that's on the fact sheet that comes with that shows this routines planning form. And what I like about this for a team is it points out all the things we need to be thinking about in terms of a child's sensory communication and tactile and physical supports. But it also helps you to kind of think about how are we going to connect this to what's happening at school, what their IEP goals are. So this, again, this is kind of more complex, but it would be a good planning tool for a teacher to use. So if you're an educator out there, this would be something I would suggest. Let's see if this goes back now to where I want it to. Oh, it's going to stop presenting. I don't know why it's doing that. And then the last one, well, the next one is on the last page. So I think it's important to have family-friendly forms. So this, again, was adapted from the New England Consortium. And this is what instead of that last form I just showed that was nice because it had all the different considerations we want to think about in terms of sensory and communication and physical support. This would be something that you could just have at the table for a family, or you could post somewhere in the bathroom. So the routine, what are the materials you want to have there? And then what are the steps? And again, making it as user-friendly, comfortable, and easy as possible. So the things you're focusing on is where the adult's going to position themselves, how they're going to communicate to the child using both sign and spoken language, how they're going to use underhand to help to have the child put their hand on top of them while they bring the spoon to their mouth, and then the processing time, waiting till the child anticipates. So there's lots of good reminders here that you're using part of that, the considerations that were on that other planning form. So Brian, do we have anything in the chat yet?
2 people had shared the routines from earlier. There's no new questions yet.
Okay, then I want to share just one. I know we're to 4 and we were going to stop at this point for discussion, but I just want to show you one short video clip of a parent talking about scripting routines and ways that they did it at her home and how it really helped her, and it helped other members, and even her son who's deafblind. So this is Vivica Hartman from Texas. Let's see, YouTube.
For me, the realization of the importance of routines, and I had that aha moment of, oh, if I'm going to have routines that I can label and be consistent and they're reliable and Christopher knows exactly what's expected of him, I had to be very routine and consistent in the order of events for him. And so I started scripting everything. There was a phase where I would put a list on his door, a list on the mirror in the bathroom for the morning, for the brushing the teeth, for this. All of a sudden I had lists everywhere. And I felt a little like I went maybe a little overboard. But I felt like it's what I needed. I needed that so that I would be consistent and routine for him. So he knew what was expected and it was predictable for him. And it seemed to work very well because then if it was me or if it was Chris or Grandma or someone else, they had a clear understanding of what the path was to get ready for bed.
Okay, so let me get back to my mini training. And I just have, no, we'll stop here. There's one more morning routine, but I will add it to the handout list and then people can see that. But this can be found on the Open Hands, Open Access training module. It's just a nice routine of watching a child do her morning routine. It's actually something she practices at school of brushing her hair and brushing her teeth, but it's an example of what could be done at home as well. And so that would be nice. So I'm going to stop my share. And it's so nice to see some of these faces I hadn't seen who was here before.